Hello friends, welcome to this video, the 11th in the series. In this video I'm going to cover nested models as part of learning FastAPI, a web framework for Python. If you have not already subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below, and also don't forget to click on the bell icon next to it. Let us start from where we stopped in the last video. This was a code. In the last video we were looking at fields. Till now, all we were doing is we were using simple types like string, float, integer, etc. And we were adding some validations to the code. Now let us get into a real world kind of a scenario where we would want to send lists or very deeply nested models. I'm going to just remove this additional code over here, which we don't require in this video. So this is where we had stopped in the last video, right? So now let me show you how to go ahead and add list into these pydantic models. For that, let us start with a small example. So let us, for the item, let us add some tags. Another attribute. So in this attribute, since tags, it can be multiple items. So I'm going to make it as a list. So in order to define lists, this is all that you need to do. Now everything is ready. If I go ahead and run the code, here we have the RestAPI function. I'm going to try this out now. So this is how the schema that we would be passing now. It takes the item that was previously defined. Now the tags will be accepted in the form of a list. So let me go ahead and add some code over here. I'm going to say apple, and the price I'm going to give it as 10. Now I'm going to add some tags, all of type string. So we have it. Now let me go ahead and submit this, and now if you see, I get back the result. That's as simple as it is. But here you can also see that, okay, like instead of this I'm going to say 1, and in this case I'm going to say 1.5. that is a string, an integer and a float. I'm sending all the three. Now you can see that, okay, like it has gone ahead, accepted them as it is. Now if you see the code here, for everything we have a type defined, but in case of the list, that's not the case. What if you would want to go ahead and add a particular type to it and only accept a particular type of data? That we can do by using a special type of list. So this list we are going to import from another module, that is typing module. So I'm going to say from typing import list. I'm going to use this list. The only difference between this list and here is this by default comes with Python, and it starts with a lowercase l, and this one starts with a uppercase L. So you need to keep that in mind. So once we have this, now I can go ahead and define the type that I would want to. Now I can go ahead and say I only want it as string. Now I've defined this. That is all. I need to make the change to the code. Let me go ahead and run this. Now if I try to submit this same thing with a string, integer and a float, and if I try to execute, you see that it accepts everything, but the only thing that you need to notice here is that everything has been converted to string type. Now even though I've given them as numbers, FastAPI has gone ahead and converted them into strings. Now what if I change this and make it as list of integers? Let me go ahead and run this. I'm going to try and submit the same thing here. If I execute this, you can see that it gives an error. It says that value is not a valid integer. Which value? The tags. Tags, the value that I have passed is not a valid integer at this index 0. What I have given here, I've submitted it as ABC. I'm going to make it as 10, and now I'm going to submit this. When I submit this, you can see here, though I have given the value as 1.5, which is a floating point value, it gets converted to an integer and then it accepts the code. What will happen if I go ahead and make it as a float type? Execute the same code. In this case, it has gone ahead, it has taken them as numbers. There are no issues. Whether it is an integer or float, it still goes through. Now what we were doing is we were taking a list. Okay, let me change this to a string type. Okay, we were passing some numbers, or this is a tags, right? For this item, these are the different variety of tags that we can pass. What if the tags are to be in this type of string, but I don't want any duplicates. Even if the user enters duplicates, I would want to go ahead and only pick the unique values. In that case, I can use another type called set. In this case, it's again from the typing module. So I'm going to say set. I'm going to just change this to set. That is all that I need to do. Now, if I go back to the code, I'm going to take this, I'm going to just modify this, and I'm going to submit it as a set of values. I have A, B, C, and again A. A appears twice, right? If I go ahead and execute this, just see the output that I'm going to get back. I'm going to get it back as A, B, and C, and the duplicates are left out. It won't consider the duplicates, it will remove it. So this is a very handy method wherein if we are supposed to only accept unique values instead of duplicates. Now that's about list and set. Let us get into a little bit more different kinds of models, and that is where we come to nested models. Each attribute of a pydantic model has a particular type. Like in this case, if you see, the item class has got an attribute name which is of type string. Description is again of type string, and so on. But that type can itself be another pydantic model. Now in this case, I'm going to add another class. So the class is named as images. Now if I have to make this as a nested model, all I'm going to do is after this, I'm going to say image. This is the name of the attribute that I'm giving. It will be of type this model, and I'm going to set it as none, so it becomes a optional parameter. Let me refresh this. Now you can see this is how the schema is expected. If we go ahead into the details of the schema, you can see that the item is a parameter that it takes. Item name is mandatory. Description is this is the validation that we had provided in the previous video. But here if you see the tags, the title is tags, it should be unique, and default is a list. So it will convert it. But in case of image, you can see that it's again as two attributes, URL and name, and then they both are mandatory. Though image is not mandatory, these two are mandatory. That is, if I pass an image, then they both will have to be passed, otherwise it won't accept. So let me try this. I'm going to submit without the image attribute. So if you see this request body, I'm not submitting the image. I'm going to click on execute, and then if you see, it goes ahead, it will take everything. The image, it is shown as null. That is what we didn't, since we didn't submit anything, image is taken as null. Now what if I go ahead and submit a image tag? How to submit that? So if you can see, I've copied the code here. So it is image and then the values in JSON format for the URL as well as name. If I go ahead and remove one of them and execute this, it throws up an error saying that field is required, because if you see the code, they both are of type string. I have not given any default value, or I have not made it optional. So these two are mandatory. Either I can skip the entire image, because here I have specified it as none, it will take it. Otherwise, if I pass the value for an image, I have to pass value for both the attributes. So now let me go back and undo this. And now if I go ahead and execute that, you can see that it has gone through. We get back everything as it is. We are passing both and we are getting them both back. FastAPI is doing quite a lot of work. First thing, it gave the editor support even for the nested models. It handled the data conversion for you. It even handled the data validation, and even finally the documentation is complete. I want you to notice one thing over here. I have given the attribute as URL, but I have passed the value as ABC, and AB is not a URL. We all know that. How to add validation, how to make sure that, okay, like when I say URL, this should be a URL. So this is where some special types come in with validations attached to them. In FastAPI, apart from the normal singular types like string, int, float, etc., FastAPI also supports a lot of other pydantic data types. To see a list of them, you can go to pydantic site, and here you can see the list of types that are supported. It supports all the standard library types like bool, int, float, string, bytes, list, etc. Not just that, it also supports the typing iterables, which are the list and other things which we have been seeing till now. And then we also have something called pydantic types. That is, these are some of the types pydantic provides, and they are very useful. That is like file path, directory path, email string, name, and there are quite a lot of them. So in our case, we are passing URL. So what we can do, there is a model that pydantic provides that is called as HTTP URL, and then I can use this particular type for the URL. So instead of string over here, I'm going to say HTTP URL, and that's it. Now if I try to submit this JSON, you can see it says invalid or missing URL schema. That value that I have passed, it doesn't support the properly defined schema, and that is why we are getting this error. Okay, let me go ahead and modify this. Now we try this. What do you think will happen? It still says invalid or missing URL schema. It's still an error. That is, we have not specified the protocol. Now if I go ahead and say and execute this, it goes through successfully. In this case, what FastAPI is doing is, because we have specified the type as HTTP URL, the URL string that we pass will be checked to make sure that it's a valid URL and documented in JSON schema as well. That's about some of the additional types. We'll see many more of these things in the coming videos. For now, I'm going to just stop here because this video is about nested models and not about the different data types what FastAPI supports. So let me go ahead and modify this code a little bit. Initially, we had a simple model with basic types, and then we updated it to accept list as well, and then we made it as a nested models by adding image to it. Like tags, an item can also have more than one type of image. So what if I need to pass that? So here we can also use the list and set, etc. Like you saw earlier. Images is equal to, I'm going to change it from just image to a list of image. So here, instead of passing a normal type for a list, I'm passing another model itself for the list. So this takes care of everything for us. Now check out the schema. Now if you see the schema, it says images is a list of images. Here the same validation again remains everything. You can see for URL additional validation because it's of type HTTP URL. It says this is the maximum length, the minimum is 1, but it should be of type URI, otherwise it will throw an error. So now let me go ahead and try this. We have a name, we have description, tags, and here I have a URL and a name. Let me execute this, and you see I get back everything. Here images is a list and not a single item. Now I can pass another item over here for images. I'm going to just copy the same thing over here. I'm going to say another Google and then click on execute. It accepts everything. The tags, only the unique ones have been picked. And then in case of images, I can pass any number of items the way we want. Till now, what we did, we were just trying with a nested model and then modified the nested model to accept list of pydantic models within a model. But I would want you to know that you can define arbitrarily a deeply nested models, and FastAPI can handle them with the same ease as it was handling all the different types. So let us go ahead and add one more model over here. It's called offer. It has 4 attributes, 3 are of normal types, but there is an attribute called items which of type list of item that we have previously defined, and this item has another list of image types. So now it goes into 3 levels, right? You can actually go ahead and extend it to any more levels. Now I'm going to modify this. I'm going to just say we can keep them as well, but for simplicity's sake I'm going to remove that. Here I'm going to say offer of type offer. That is all it takes. Now I'll refresh it. Notice the schema here. The schema is type is of offer. It has 4 attributes, and the last one is list of items. Items is again a model, right? So it's a list of items. Item, if we expand this, you can see that it has all the attributes, the same tags which we had, a set, and then image, a list of images. So let me go ahead and try this out. So in this case, name offer 1, description I'm going to give it as cashback. So I'm going to have item. So and then we have the tags. I'm going to add it, and then images. I'm going to add a list of them. Let me go ahead and execute the code. Now you can see it went through successfully. All the validations, whatever we had given, it works properly. Now with this, I said items is of type list. So I can go ahead and add another item. So I'm going to just copy this as it is, only change the name of the item. So this is the second item, and then the third item. So the last one is name is mango, and then I'm going to make this as orange. I have 3 items now. If I execute that, you can see it went through successful, and here you can see everything that I have submitted. The first item is apple, we have orange, and then mango. Everything goes through. FastAPI has handled and done quite a lot of things behind the scenes to make all this thing look very simple. So that's how easy it is in FastAPI to pass a deep set of nested models. Till now we were passing everything as an item. What if we want the entire body itself is of a type list? Even that can be done. Here all you're going to do is offers, and you're going to just make it as list of type offer. So here we can send any number of offers together. You want to see the schema, you can see that it's called offers. Okay, and if you can see the square bracket to specify that it's a list of type offer. Now let me go ahead and try this. I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to send the same value that I passed earlier. When I execute that, you can see it has gone through. Now if you want to test it, at the end I'll go ahead and add the same thing. I'll just change the name of the offer. I'm going to say offer to discount. Execute that. Now I passed 2 offers. Now you can see here it has gone through. The first one is offer 1 cashback. The rest of the things, since we have copied, it will remain the same. And then we have another offer and discount. At the high level itself, I am passing a list instead of a single object. Okay, that's how simple it is for passing nested models in FastAPI. With this, we get a complete editor support at all levels, and we also get the complete set of validations that come with the types and the models, and also we can go ahead and define the validations, and the documentation is also generated for us. Now after this, let us see using dicts with FastAPI, and this dict comes from the typing module. I'm going to say dict, and this is what we'll be using here. We can declare the body as a dict with keys of some type and values of some type. In the normal dict, the key would always be of type string, but in this case I can go ahead and define even the key and the value to be of a specific type. This would be useful where we want to have the keys in the type of integers but the values as something else. So let us go ahead and try this. In this case, I'm using the dict and I'm going to define it as of type integer and a float. So let me go ahead. So I've imported dict over here. I'm going to add one more function, and this function, it's called as create index weights, and the weights is of type dict. Here the main thing that you need to understand is the key is of type integer and the value is of type float. Refresh this. We have two functions. One is put, the other one is post that we created now. Let me go ahead and try this out. So this is how we pass the dictionary values, right? So let me go ahead and give some values over here and execute this. When I execute this, notice that it throws up an error. It says that the key value is not a valid integer. It's the same error for all the three keys that we pass, or the three key value pairs. In that, the error says that value is not a valid integer. The reason, if you notice here, we wanted the key to be of type integer and not string. Usually with normal dicts, the key will be of type string, and then we can have any type of value, but here we can define the type for both key and the values. So now I'll go ahead and change this. Also notice that since it's a key, we should always pass it within the quotes, and FastAPI knows how to handle this. Now if I execute this, you can see that it has gone through and it has taken this. In this case, we wanted the key to be just numbers and not a string, and that validation has been taken care of. Now if I go ahead and modify this and make this as well as a string, it throws an error, says that value is not a valid float. Just notice that for every key value pair we get an error. It is not that it shows in one place and then it stops. It shows for every key value. In the first index, it says that value was not of type float, and the same for the last one, because both are passed as strings instead of float. Take this. The same thing here, it was a value. In this case, it is clearly saying that the key is missing. So we get that detail of validation. Now let me go ahead and modify this, pass proper values, execute it, and you can see it goes through successfully. Just have in mind that JSON only supports strings as key, and that is the reason we need to pass it. But pydantic has automatic data conversion, and it converts them automatically internally, so that now it gets converted to integer. That means even though the API clients can only send string as keys, as long as those strings contain pure numbers, in this case it's integer, pydantic will convert them and even validate them. Okay, and the dict that you receive as weights will actually have int keys and float type values. Like this, I can go ahead and provide more examples, but I would leave that for you to try it out. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments or join our Telegram channel, and that would be the best way for me to answer you directly at any point of time. Let us recap what we did till now. With FastAPI, we have maximum flexibility. Pydantic models provide all this flexibility, and while keeping our code very simple, short and elegant, we get quite a lot of benefits. Like, first thing is the editor support, which you saw earlier. We can do data conversion like parsing and serialization. It validates the data that we pass. The schema is documented, and even a complete documentation is generated automatically without not even writing a single line of code. Everything comes free for us. In the next video, I am going to cover additional data types that Pydantic supports, like the HTTP URL that we saw in this video. If you have not already subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below, and also don't forget to click on the bell icon next to it. Thank you.